sisters in the temple of justice.
For anyone on the bench of the Nigerian judiciary, this chamber is the ultimate.
Let us all strive to maintain the independence of the judiciary so as to ensure the rule of law.
And the fact that the ministry is responsible for prosecution of cases makes the ministry very visible naturally.
Of the Federal Republic of
Nigerian Bar Association.
and the Nigerian Bar Association. If it is to buy time, you know who is buying time.
Becoming the first woman in the country to discharge the function. To me, Allah wished it that way.
Welcome to the program, The Scale of Justice.
Tune in every Monday at 2:05 p.m. and repeat broadcast comes up every Wednesday at 6:30 a.m. on the network service of the NTA. Keep a date with us.
Hello, always nice to be with you on this program, the program we call The Scale. And that program helps you to look into the happenings of the third arm of government. We go around from the judiciary to the justice sector, and we indeed do an analysis of some of the laws that we are running in Nigeria. I'm Femi Okeowo, with the pleasure of having you around with us. It's just over a year now that this government commenced its second tenure after being elected for another 4-year term. That is the government of President Muhammadu Buhari. Now, one part of that government that has that has gained continuity, if continuity is a credit, is the justice sector. Abubakar Malami, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, has been the Minister of Justice since 2015. And now, with 2019 coming and him retaining that office, he has chosen to do a constant briefing of Nigerians of what is happening in the justice sector, particularly these days that so many things that are happening revolve around the justice sector. And so the Minister of Justice, Abubakar Malami, did parley with judiciary correspondents in Abuja and decided to feed us into the happenings in the justice sector, in the Ministry of Justice, and how much this ministry has impacted on positive governance in Nigeria. That is what we're going to focus on this edition of The Scale. And so we'll go to the Olusegun Obasanjo Hall at the Ministry of Justice, where media men gathered to hear what the ministry has been doing to help the Buhari administration maintain its focus. Solicitor General of the Federation, Dayo Akpata, said that the growing interest in the nation's justice sector activities made it necessary to hold the media interaction.
The media coverage of in the Judiciary Code demonstrates that justice is served and criminals are punished. In as much as the media may expose wrongdoings in many systems, effective coverage of the justice sector also help in preventing injustices by shining spotlights on the actions of justice lawyers and participants in justice. If I may just say it there, when we look at the whole gamut of press coverage, you find out that judicial correspondents hold one of the main key to effective administration of justice, rule of law in any given country, because you are the one that midwife the relationship between the legislative, judiciary, and the executive. Yes. It is in the light of the above that the Federal Ministry of Justice therefore saw the need for capacity building workshop to strengthen the skills of our journalists with a view to achieving efficient and effective coverage of the justice sector. The benefits of such capacity building engagement are multidimensional for journalists, the media organization, justice sector, and the general public. This is the first time in the history of Nigeria that Ministry of Justice is now one of the 10 leading revenue yielding establishment institution in Nigeria. We want to tell you, when you look at it, that before now, you find out that the Ministry of Justice has always been in that traditional of going to court, of doing it, but with the asset management and recovery, Ministry of Justice is now one of the 10 leading establishments that now recover revenue for Nigeria. Thank you very much.
On violent crimes in the country, the Minister of Justice said over 500 terrorism cases have been handled between May 29, 2019 and July this year. He added that contrary to claims in some quarters, the nation's fight against corruption is getting stronger.
What is it that Ministry of Justice is doing for the purpose of ensuring at the end of the day that we have in place special courts that will be dedicated to the cases of anti-corruption for the purpose of enhancing the speed and then having quality justice delivery in terms of prosecution. We equally are expected to promote policies that will establish and enhance the welfare for judicial officers. We are equally expected to consider the correctional service decongestion program of the government, taking into consideration the sorry state of our correctional service centers and formation across the country. We equally consider the need for national crime database, which is a technological database development that will allow the courts and judicial service, judicial sector generally to access information with particular reference to investigation and prosecution of cases. Again, one of the components as it relates to deliverables are speedy illicit asset recovery, legislations for speedy trials, all targeted at streamlining criminal trial prosecution by agencies, job creation collaboration with private sector, speedy completion of high-profile corruption cases, and speedy passage of executive bills. So the vision arising from these deliverables is to make justice accessible to all, consistent with ideals of democracy and rule of law. And the mission, therefore, is to maintain the highest standards of professionalism, loyalty to the ideals of fairness and sustenance of healthy relationship between all arms and tiers of government. The Federal Ministry of Justice, in essence, is the federal government's primary institution responsible for the promotion of constitutionalism, provision of legal services, administration of justice, and promotion of socio-economic and political development of the country. The ministry is charged with the responsibility and mandate of providing legal advice and services to government, promoting the legal rights of citizens, interfacing between the executive and judicial arms of government, interfacing between executive and legislature by supporting legislative drafting, among others. Under review, 500 terrorism cases were handled, 10 cases on Securities and Exchange Commission were handled, 10 cases on hostage taking and kidnapping were handled, and 3 cases on cyber crimes were indeed handled. That brings, by the end of 2019, to about 40% completion rate as it relates to the cases that were reflected. And as at May 2020, 45% of the around 600 cases received by the department were indeed handled and disposed of. Let me now come to the civil litigation department. The percentage of civil cases handled is as follows. 60% of the cases handled were on human rights matters, and we have succeeded in saving the federal government about 10 billion naira cost relating to the claims arising from those fundamental human rights cases that were being litigated in court. About 25% of the cases were on contracts, and I'm happy to report that we equally succeeded in saving the federal government about 3.5 billion naira relating to claims associated with contracts. And 15% of the cases handled were cases relating to land. As it relates to the jurisdictions where these cases were handled, 90 of those cases were at the Court of Appeal and Supreme Court. 100 of the cases handled were in National Industrial Court. 110 were at the Higher Court of States and the FCT, and 400 cases were litigated at the Federal High Court. So for cases litigated at Federal High Court, which were 50 cases, relating to 50 cases, component thereof, we saved the federal government 1,765,015,000 naira relating to the cases that were handled before Federal High Court. On cases that were litigated before ECOWAS Court, we have succeeded in saving the government 150 million in naira and 800 million in dollars. As it relates to the cases handled at state high courts, 20 cases were disposed of, and those cases translate to a saving of 181 million naira for the federal government. As it relates to the efforts of the federal ministry related to cases handled internationally, I am happy to report that arising from the efforts, prosecutional efforts of the Federal Ministry of Justice, 8 cases were dropped at the International Criminal Court on account of robust presentation made by the Federal Ministry of Justice relating to criminal cases filed against the interest of the federal government before International Criminal Court. We entertained 58 mutual legal assistance requests from 58 countries across the globe. We have succeeded also in forcing Swiss to post a bond of $14 million relating to a piracy case that is in contention. As it relates to MOUs involving Nigeria and some other countries and agencies, ministries, agencies, departments and agencies of government, we treated 42 MOUs and ensured at the end of the day that arising from the quality support provided in analysis of this document that the interest of the federal government is adequately factored into the MOUs. We received 11 requests for extradition, and indeed attended and contributed to all statutory meetings of the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, report on the implementation of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights in Nigeria, presented to United Nations Human Rights Convention in Geneva, among others. Again, on African Commission on Human and People's Rights, Nigeria has been applauded and is indeed up to date with the reporting obligation. First national workshop on Nigerian Correctional Services Act was carried out, and a point of interest relating to Nigerian Correctional Service Act is the new innovations brought into the law for the purpose of ensuring decongestion of our prison formations across the nation. We have equally supported process like demarcation exercise between Nigeria and Cameroon as it relates to provision of international legal guidance on border and pillar demarcations. On the fight against corruption and associated recovery of looted and illicit assets, I am happy to report that within the period in contention, Nigeria has succeeded in recovering $311 million from Abuja Loot 3 from US and New Jersey. The money has since been repatriated to Nigeria. We are, as it is, now pursuing a recovery of 62 billion dollars arrears from oil companies relating to relating to recovery, relating to profit sharing contract agreement. Again, these monies, as recovered, the 311 million, has supported the utility development and by the agreement of the parties, and indeed the Nigerian state, are to be applied to the development of Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, Kano-Abuja Expressway, and Second Niger Bridge. Relating to OPL 245, Malabu, $1 billion is being pursued for recovery, and the $72 million component relating thereto has already been recovered from UK and repatriated back to Nigeria. And we have joined as interested parties and victims of crime a litigation pending in Italy, in respect of which we have applied for our interest as a nation to be registered in relation to around 1 billion naira being the subject of litigation, a criminal litigation in Italy relating to OPL 245. On the whistleblowers recovery policy, I am happy to report that we have succeeded within the period in recovering around 685 million naira, and the amount has been well lodged into the asset recovery account of the federal government. On the disposal of vessels, trucks, and barges, the Office of the Attorney General has succeeded in disposal of a sizable amount, and the sum of 500 million naira has already been lodged into the asset recovery of the federal government arising from the sales of these assets. I am happy to report that arising from the innovative amendments effected to this act, the fortune of Nigerian states as it relates to revenue generation has multiplied beyond imagination. As at 2018, Nigeria recorded meager sum of 22 billion naira for the whole year relating to stamp duties. But with the innovations and amendment effected on the Stamp Duties Act, within a span of 6 months, Nigeria in 2020 recorded around 66 billion naira, which indeed is a triple in terms of the volume recorded arising from the new innovations brought into the law amendment by the department. We have developed certain policies as a ministry for the purpose of ensuring the transparency and accountability associated with the recovery and disposal of assets. On this note, we have succeeded in putting in place asset tracing, recovery and management regulation, which is a regulation designed to bring about the desired consistency, uniformity, and transparency and accountability in the system associated with the recovery of assets. Again, we have put in place standard operating procedure for asset disposal, an implementation of National Anti-Corruption Strategy 2017 to 2021, and indeed, at the national level, we have succeeded in sponsoring resolution on strengthening asset recovery to support 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development in December 2019 at Abu Dhabi. On the human rights, I am equally happy to report that our human rights position has not been very bad as far as compliance and upholding the culture of entrenching the protection of human rights is concerned. We have demonstrated that as it relates to Afro-6 killings, where we, at our instance, the sum of 135 million was paid as compensation. We equally supported the passage of Anti-Torture Act 2017. We supported the passage of Niger Delta Development Commission Amendment Act. We supported the passage of Compulsory Treatment and Care for Victims of Gunshot Act 2017. We supported the passage of Discrimination Against Persons with Disabilities Prohibition Act, among others. At the international level, we are happy to report that we have been in effective and active collaboration with United Nations on the human rights record and United Nations Special Rapporteur. We have addressed the issue of right to adequate standard of living on non-discrimination, extrajudicial summary and arbitrary executions to Nigeria were all issues that were deliberated and then worked upon with Nigeria at the international level. And in that respect, we met our reporting obligations under Article 62 of the African Charter on Human Rights. So we have, in that regard, facilitated meetings with United Nations Special Rapporteur on extrajudicial summary and arbitrary executions to Nigeria, facilitated meetings with United Nations on adequate housing, right to adequate standard of living, and non-discrimination. Nigeria met reporting obligations under Article 62 of the African Charter on Human and People's Rights.
At least you are able to know some of the things that are happening around and how much this is impacting positively on governance in Nigeria, whether it is fighting corruption or fighting terrorism, or indeed helping other arms of government to get a focus in terms of legal advice. We have been able to hear what Abubakar Malami has been doing in office. We'll see you again with more happenings in the justice sector of Nigeria and the judiciary particularly. We'll see you. Bye-bye.